Welcome to another edition of Whether or Not. Joining me as always, or maybe not as always, we have to get some time off from time to time too. Brian Karstens. Here we are midweek. Played softball last night.
You did?
Yeah, licking my wounds.
Okay. How'd it go?
It went pretty good. We split 1-1, lost one. And it was a nice night. It really was. The one thing I did notice, mosquitoes were out.
You know, there have been a few more around. I know bugs in general tend to be a little more common anyway in late August. But yeah, with some of the recent rain and the standing water, right, kind of breeds those mosquitoes. So
And light wind, too.
Yep. So
Able to hover around a little bit more than you want them to.
So do you have the bug spray on?
No, I didn't, but I did have the long sleeves on.
Yeah.
And so they were just getting, my exposed skin, hands. I think I had one like in the temple of my head, too. Just annoying. Annoying.
It's part of summer. And the unofficial end of summer.
Coming this weekend.
Labor Day weekend. So we're going to talk about that. That's going to be a big subject because the weather will feature some rain chances this weekend.
With a slow-moving area of low pressure that will keep our rain chances around once they do start on Friday across western South Dakota. And then as we get into next week on Thursday, the way it looks right now, we may see those overnight low temperatures sneak into the 30s. That's something that we've kind of mentioned yesterday and earlier in the week. We'll see as the new data comes in as we go over the next couple of days how much of that holds true. And then, of course, we always take a look at the pattern ahead over the next 2 weeks. And if we decide to go any longer than that, we'll bring you that information as well. Stay with us. There's plenty to talk about on this edition of Whether or Not. Welcome back to Whether or Not. I do want to start with Futurecast. As we go through the rest of today, we will have to watch western South Dakota for developing showers and thunderstorms. This is later in the afternoon. Notice western KELOLAND, maybe something developing across the hills of western South Dakota. And then later this evening, it's eastern and southeastern South Dakota, mainly into Minnesota with a shower or thunderstorm chance. So we'll have to watch our radar as we do go through the later part of the day today and even extending into the early part of tonight. Otherwise, numbers in the 70s and 80s for afternoon highs, probably feel a little more humidity in the air. And then for tonight, any showers, thunderstorms that do develop, they will weaken as we go through the overnight hours. Not to say we can have a couple of these linger into early tonight, but during the overnight, I think a lot of this will weaken as temperatures fall to the 50s for overnight lows. And let's talk about this coming weekend, Brian, as we are looking at shower and thunderstorm chances that will eventually slowly make their way across KELOLAND.
Yep, and that's the key word, slow. This is an upper-level low that is going to come out into the plains and effectively stall. So that's going to give us a couple things to think about because, obviously, if it wraps in some decent amount of moisture with it, that can throw in a big part of your weekend, at least to consider for outdoor plans, because obviously rain is built into our forecast. Right now we're going 80% chances in Rapid City on Friday.
Starting on Friday.
Yep, and then that expands eastward here into Saturday.
And you can see some of that on Futurecast, too, as we go through the day on Saturday. Look at the James River Valley really starting to fill in with showers and thunderstorms for the afternoon, some of that continuing into the evening. Periods of heavy rain will be possible, and we'll talk more about that coming up. With the cloud cover and with the rain, we'll have to watch these temperatures for afternoon highs. I would think a lot of us, if we continue with the clouds, the rain, if you're stuck in that pattern for this weekend, you'll probably stay in the 60s for afternoon highs. This is a look at Sunday. Now, notice it's maybe not as widespread with the heavy rain, but it's still raining as we get into Sunday morning, Sunday afternoon. A lot of this for central and eastern KELOLAND, as that area of low pressure would just be wrapped up and very slow to move, too. Eastern South Dakota, east central South Dakota, we are looking at the showers, thunderstorms, the lows right about there. As you see the circulation with our wind arrows. So this moves to the east for Sunday night. Lingering rain for Monday in eastern South Dakota, Minnesota, northwestern Iowa. Looks like the chances for rain will continue right into Monday At the same time, western South Dakota will try to warm, getting these temperatures back to the 80s. Some of those 80s will eventually spread into central and south central South Dakota on Monday, but with the clouds and the rain, eastern KELOLAND just stuck with temperatures probably in the 60s to near 70 degrees. Here's a map, Brian, that we bring up. This measures the amount of moisture that's stacked in the atmosphere. You see our low end to our high end with that legend in the upper right-hand portion of the screen. But this is one that we brought in a lot during the summer. And we know the pockets of heavy rain that we had during the summer, too. That kind of illustrates that here.
It does. And what's interesting here is that if you would rewind time to last night or even the day before, the amount of moisture, the operational runs of the European model were suggesting were lower. But we've also noticed that the average, what we call the ensemble, so we have some weighted gears that we use in statistical probability on these things, those numbers have been higher. But this map here, you're showing the brand new data this morning, and the reds and the oranges are certainly enough to grab our attention because we're dealing with a very slow-moving system. And that's one key factor here. When you've got a storm system that's not moving, then if this stuff sticks over, like let's pick on Beetle County. Yeah, I hate to do that because the state fair is going on, Scott. You know, I know that's not I don't want to rain out your plans here, but we do need to be mindful of the fact that we could, in that general region of northeast South Dakota, James Valley, you're kind of sitting ahead of the low on Saturday. You got a south wind. You're kind of priming things. So if you get underneath a couple of those strips or streaks of rainfall and they train, I would not be surprised one bit if there was some locally heavy rain in that pattern. And fortunately, it's Wednesday, so we're going to have another couple days to kind of watch that.
But I think it's good to get this information out now as the new models continue to come in. And again, this is the latest look at what we've had as we looked at these models during the morning hours. And Brian, I think you'll go over a couple of the QPF numbers coming up here in just a bit. But let's let this graphic play out. This is Saturday morning and still picking up on these heavier bullseyes of rain from Huron to the north, getting into Brown County. And then I think this eventually starts to fill in, too, in the southeastern South Dakota. So that's Saturday morning. Notice how it's slowly trying to fill in during the evening hours on Saturday. But, this spot right here between Huron and Aberdeen, this really hasn't moved. Near Redfield, we're looking at the possibility for the heavy rain to just continue as we get into the evening hours on Saturday. Now, as this low pressure system moves to the east and we do get into the later hours of Sunday, Monday, then of course it will take its moisture with it, take the deep moisture with it, as well as it finally decides to exit as we do get into early next week. And I still think we'll have some lingering rain on Monday, on Labor Day. So here's a look at those computer runs, Brian, with the expected amount of precipitation.
So this goes off of the map you just showed, but this is a little different perspective. So we're looking at the percentage of normal. So if you looked at the atmosphere, go up from the ground all the way up to the top of the sky, and then you look at how much water is in that column of air relative to average. So anything in blue or green is above the average. Anything in the brownish colors, we'll say, that's below average. Okay, so notice right away your eye catches all this moisture in Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming. So what happens here? This is Thursday. Now we're going to take you into Friday. Look at that. That low comes right off of that area of higher moisture. And so it sits there and continues to spin, and effectively it stalls because it's obviously, sits several days here in South Dakota. And so that's kind of the hyper-local problem, if you want to call it that. If you've had too much rain lately, yeah, you know who I'm talking about. There are definitely those that are in that category. There's the central region. Again, one more time, let's look back at that. Again, the numbers suggest 100 and probably 150% to 200% of normal moisture in the atmosphere. So that's quite a bit. And then it effectively stalls and eventually kind of washes out into maybe after Labor Day. And then another graphic here, Scott, I want to bring up just because, and this is, again, going to look at the latest data here on the precip totals. Okay, so what do we see here? Well, we've got some pretty big numbers, okay? Now, on television, we have not discussed this a whole lot, but you're watching this program. In this program, we're going to explore that a little bit because we've got a little more time to talk about it. So this is what we call the deterministic run of the European model. This is just straight off the model. It doesn't mean that we haven't touched this or doctored it up or anything. It's just showing you what it has. So those red areas, that's 2 inches of rain or more, and that's a large chunk of real estate. That goes from northwest South Dakota into southern Minnesota. That's a rain total that runs from Friday, well, essentially Thursday night, into Labor Day. So it's the whole thing. And I can actually parse that out if we slide this bar here. It goes through time. So that's your Friday rain in western South Dakota. There's into Saturday. Kind of expands a little bit farther east. Then you add in Sunday. And you add in Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that going to happen? That's the question. That's what everybody wants to know. Are we going to really get that much rain? Well, let me give you something else to think about. We're going to bring in the ensemble. Okay, now this is a different product. This is looking at a collection of variables that tends to water down some of those things. But when we see a map like this, and let me zoom in a little closer. That's, I know, the U.S. version here, the big view overall. So what I'm going to do here is bring in our local area. And when we do that, Scott, we're still looking at numbers over an inch of rain.
Approaching 2, I would say, for some.
Yeah, and that's, again, the broader perspective that goes right from, we'll say mostly Friday, Saturday, Sunday. See that animation right there? So that tends to give you a little better geographic location, and it says, there's probably going to be some rain around with this, and that, an inch of rain is definitely a big deal if it's parked over a weekend when it's Labor Day weekend.
Labor Day weekend, State Fair going on.
Yeah, so those are things we know of today. Now, again, these are factors we'll be able to dial in a little bit more tomorrow and the day after.
AI version in.
AI, good.
Just for another.
I'm glad you brought that up because this is another product we use a lot. And I always remind our viewers as we bring in AI technology into the weather arena that this product has shown very good skill scores. This is something that any meteorologist needs to be using now.
It's doing better on the cold air. It picks it up a little sooner as compared to what the deterministic model does.
Yep, and it's an entirely different way of looking at things because it's looking at past weather. Mm-hmm. It's very fascinating to see how this all works. But essentially, it uses things in the past to predict the future. It operates a lot differently. But here's the result. Okay, let me back up to Friday. Look at this. Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Still see a bullseye over South Dakota.
Yep.
A little bit different, a little heavier. And this is, again, a product that it tends to be more a broader resolution. You're not going to see those individual realistic-looking thunderstorms or those kind of things. Where we are in technology today is we're not there yet. That's not part of this suite of products. But it does give us some confidence building that, in that general area of eastern South Dakota, there is some rain to be had there. And obviously those numbers could get larger as we go through time. Now, you mentioned temperatures. Okay, well, that's another subject. This actually picks up on above and below normal weather. So look at this beyond. This is into Tuesday night and Wednesday. And right there, all of that green, I know those are little numbers in there, but those are all representing
between 12 below average and 15 below average?
Yep, 10 to 15 degrees below normal. And then, look at that, Thursday morning next week. So this is September 4th. I don't want to steal your thunder because I know you got a couple graphics on this.
That's perfectly fine. But the big debate is, do we call it cool, cold, or chilly?
Well, let's be honest. This is now a few different times it's shot out the idea of frost in Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. Not that far away.
Now, if you get frost on September 4th, I think that's noteworthy. If I was in agriculture right now and in Minnesota, I know crop conditions and all of that, crop progress reports, we still have a lot of crop that has to mature yet. So I'm not telling you that that's a killing freeze. I'm not saying that that's what we're forecasting. But in Minnesota, you look through, those areas, and if those departures from normal continue to show up, it's quite possible you could have lows in the mid-30s.
And they can expand, move farther west.
Yes, possibility. So just keep it in the back of your mind right now. And my hope is that when we go into next week, we'll end up, maybe we'll be chilly. Maybe we'll have a few 30s. Nobody wants frost yet. That's just too early.
Too early.
But any air that descends from the Yukon territory, it's worth noting that could be pretty cool. And that's exactly where this comes from on the AI version of the European models. So if you enjoy this conversation, if you think this is interesting,
we are going to be talking about it probably for the rest of the week.
Yeah, and email us too. If you've got a question about this, we'll try to answer it. We don't have to mention names on the air, but we can at least, we'll dive into a subject if you think this is interesting. You've got a couple more stats here to share with us.
Yes, we'll go ahead and take a look at the monthly precipitation. Showed this yesterday and show it again right now as we are looking at some of these rainfall amounts already approaching 7 inches in Huron, and we have more rain coming. That is just what we discussed across KELOLAND, and some of that may park across east central South Dakota. So it looks like we'll continue to add to those amounts. Something I'll do later is probably look up the heaviest rains that we've had for the month of August for a total across eastern South Dakota. I'll probably do some homework on that either later today or tomorrow and try to bring you that information for tomorrow. Just something that stands out right now, of course, with Huron approaching 7 inches and a lot more rain on the way. They could use some of the rain across western South Dakota, as you see the amounts there around 1.5 inches in Rapid City. How does this compare to the average for August? We're below average in the western and southwestern South Dakota, a little bit below in Sioux Falls, well above, though, in Huron by over 4.5 inches. Above by almost 3 in Watertown. So we'll continue to watch those numbers go up. And Brian mentioned those temperatures falling to the 30s in parts of eastern KELOLAND on September 4th. We'll watch this low pressure system come in from Canada. Along with it, we'll have the northwest and north winds helping to bring in that colder air. I'll leave it up to you for what word you want to use to describe it. Cooler, cold, chilly. But there is a look at some of the lowest forecast model lows that I found from this morning for September 4th. Getting down to 39, Sioux Falls, Aberdeen, Watertown 40, Huron at 42. I'll try to keep this graphic and compare it to what the model says for tomorrow to see if it warms that low or it cools those overnight lows. So something that we'll follow as we get beyond Labor Day. And we'll talk more about our weather pattern. Welcome back to A Weather or Not. We'll talk about our weather pattern. This is the 500 millibar pattern, and it picks up on that slow-moving low-pressure system as we go through this weekend. You see that slowly making its way through KELOLAND. That's a look at Sunday as it still lingers into the area. Out of here by Tuesday, but look at this. As we do get into midweek, and we've been mentioning these hits of cooler air coming or colder air. You can see that low pressure system into northern Minnesota, southern Canada. Behind it, we'll watch that cold air just pour in, thanks in part to northerly winds. And Brian, I'm interested to see if how cold those temperatures are as they do move across the upper Great Lakes. Do you know what I'm thinking about?
Well, it's Canadian cool weather for sure, isn't it?
It is. And then you get the warm lake waters.
So you're thinking about some instability showers and
lake effect snows?
Have you checked the 540 thicknesses on any of that?
Yeah, I haven't. I just looking at how our temperatures are expected to fall.
Don't worry, I can check that right now. I don't think we're in those
in that territory yet.
No, we're not. But, we do have, though, we're probably going to get some instability showers at least and some Hudson Bay low, we talk about those kind of phrases, too, when it gets into the colder season.
More in the winter than the early fall, we'll say.
Right. Yeah, that's perhaps something that, you don't normally hear us talk a lot about this time of the year. But colder air, it's part of this conversation across the Northern Plains and Great Lakes,
It's been the theme of the show, and it will continue to be the theme of the show as we look at below average temperatures midweek of next week. And as these numbers do go back and forth, we'll see if we can continue the rain chances as we do get into next week. We know we have the rain coming this weekend. We'll see what happens next week as we try to slowly warm it getting into the following weekend. but it doesn't last long. You see some warmer weather trying to return around the 7th of September. That's a Sunday. And then another low pressure system moves through. Second front moves through to bring in maybe some rain chances on Tuesday, Monday going into Tuesday, September 8th and 9th. And then it also shows what's going on to our west with the low pressure system moving across the western United States. And we've been mentioning that too. Might be able to see a trough develop. This one's really cut off, though. I don't see much of a trough trying to develop with that. Seems like it's a cutoff low trying to move across Northern California as we do get into the first week and a half of September. So we'll see what happens with that. In the meantime, here comes the rain for the weekend, heavy at times, especially in the eastern and southeastern South Dakota. So here's our rain outlook for the next 14 days. And notice how it does fill in for the northern Great Lakes. And we also have that well to our south into Kansas, down toward Texas along the Gulf Coast. So we do have a busy period of weather coming as we begin the month of September. And just for fun, here is a look at the snow outlook for the next 14 days. See how it tries to fill a couple of these in here. But this is up into Canada before it hits the Great Lakes.
I noticed that. I was just looking at a couple of those things in Ontario.
We'll see.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, but no, it's not quite to that level in Michigan just yet. But isn't it interesting as we look at these patterns? And here's another little something I like to just bring up in our conversation. So I'm going to show you this. This is a map that we're looking at North America, okay? So you see that we got some different colors here. The greens, the blues, that's below normal, okay? Reds, magentas, charcoal colors, that's above normal. Now look how this map starts. Look at how impressive all this heat above average. In British Columbia, we're looking at the Yukon Territories, northern Alberta, okay? So remember, when you see air like that in regions that should be normally you'd think about being cooler, well, air is being displaced, right? That means that something has moved in there. So the air that normally occupies that space has moved elsewhere, or things are moving around. Now, notice the progression of this. That, again, is all draped up to our north. Now, we're sitting underneath that, so we've actually been able to see cooler than average temperatures, some of that driven by rain across the United States. But notice in this animation, once we get past Labor Day, okay, watch that little blob that comes out of Alaska right there, and it comes all the way down into Minnesota and the Northern Plains.
So, I like to say that's our Alaskan connection.
Well, it definitely shows that possibility that air originated well over the Arctic Ocean or up at least into northern Alaska or eastern Russia, and then it comes down. So is it going to be that dramatic? That's the question. If it deflects more into the Great Lakes, you'll see this forecast kind of watered down a little bit. It'll be chilly. It'll be cool. Yeah. But we saw that we've seen that this week.
But it should be a little colder.
Yeah.
The way it looks now.
Yep. And obviously with that in mind, here's another one. You see that second push right there? Look how warm it is, British Columbia, and then the displacement to the east. So those are the things you want to watch when you look at these upper air drivers. Now, there are different things we look at called teleconnections that help us look at areas of high pressure and low pressure. There's a variety of different teleconnections. One of those factors is called the Arctic Oscillation.
Okay.
So the Arctic Oscillation is one of many drivers, but it obviously relates directly to colder air coming cross-polar. Now, wintertime, that's a bigger driver. But I always think back to 2009. That year was an extremely impressive AO. We don't have that this year, by the way, just in case you're curious.
Leading into the winter months.
Correct. Yeah, that year there were a lot of warning signs that we were going to have a rougher winter because we had an AI that was already crashing in late summer, and we ended up with some pretty strong cold fronts. And then it kind of held back. September of that year was better. Then October got wet. The AI turned out, or the AO, I should say, the Arctic Oscillation went back into negative territory. So you put that as one factor. Mm-hmm. There's a whole stack of them. This year is going to be different than, they're all different, aren't they?
Every year is different. Yeah.
And that's where you come in when you look at things like this is early bird signals to a winter forecast. And it's interesting to see the ups and downs. Even at the very end of this animation, it shows more chilly weather in the Pacific Northwest. So September will have, I'm sure, its ups and downs. I'm not worried about that at all.
Will it have more ups than downs?
Yeah.
It looks like it wants to have more downs than ups.
Yeah. And that's where the average will come into play at the end of September. So I guess just interesting to see these things play out. And we'll be here in the Storm Center with more commentary, I'm sure, tomorrow.
As we always do. That's it for our latest edition of Weather or Not. As my college roommate once told me, there's always a 100% chance of weather.
That is a wonderful observation, Scott.
Thank you for joining us. We'll talk to you tomorrow.